Hello, everyone, and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where we are celebrating today. We are celebrating a book launch. Our show today is Fashion, Travel, and Fitness. I'm Dr. JACALYN KERBECK, the president, founder, and chief listening officer here at our network, where we celebrate and embrace elevated listening skills. The topic of our show today, it's going to be fashion and travel. And we've got a great guest who's back with us. And I always say this, when guests come back, it warms my heart because I feel like we're doing the right thing, that people feel safe and comfortable and they want to continue sharing the journey with us. Before we bring her out, let's welcome the star of our show, DIANN Floyd BOEHM. Thank you so much, DIANN, for joining us at a new time for this particular episode. DIANN, as you may know if you've met her before, is somebody, I don't know how she does everything that she does. She's all over the world, giving, helping, really bringing value, especially during the holiday season. We'll have a little bit of a chat about that. She's an internationally renowned author. She has been a teacher, an educator. She's worked in the technology field, and she's a good friend. Let's welcome her.
Hi, Dr. JACALYN. Thanks for the
Hello.
introduction.
How are you today?
Very well. I love how you weaved in all the chapters of my life.
Well, there's so much more than that, but I am always amazed at you and everything that you've accomplished. And we were just actually brought up your name on the show before this because you and your husband, your family, you really are so much about giving back and helping other people, especially during the holiday season. And even though that doesn't fall in exactly with our topic today, tell us a little bit about how you give the gift of happiness and joy to other people during the holidays.
I never really thought about it like that because it's just part of my nature. But I like to think that if someone needed me and that I could, if possible, drop everything and be there for them because that's what friendship's all about. When I hear there's been a crisis somewhere, whether it's a flood in America or somewhere else in the world, like water, I think there was a big mudslide in Pakistan at one point, and a huge group of us, because I was living in Dubai at the time, got together and we made sure that we had just gallons and gallons of bottled water sent to the people because it was a very, very poor area. Um, just, wherever I see that the good Lord's calling me, that's where I try to be.
Thank you so much, DIANN. I really appreciate you. And as you know, on this show, we have three subject areas: fashion, which we love. We had our show with our scarves and accessories; travel, we love to travel; and then fitness. I'm obsessed with fitness. We have somebody here today who's going to be sharing two areas, fashion and travel, that she has a lot of expertise in. And she is someone I really admire. She was in the corporate world, and as so many of us, we do our thing, we give our time, we put our effort in, and then we realize, hey, you know what, I think there might be something else out there for me. I'm going to go and give it a shot. So she is an author, and she's somebody who I believe is going to add a lot of value to our program today. So before we bring Sherry out, we've had the pleasure of interviewing her before. Can you think of any key takeaways from the shows, DIANN?
Well, she has a lot of value of information, and so I hope everybody has a pen and paper and get ready to take some notes because she's just chock full of really quality information, and I really appreciate people like that are willing to share what they've learned with others. So, yay!
Yeah. Thanks so much. So let's bring out Sherry Knowlton. She is the author of Beyond the Sunset Travel Series. Volumes 1 and 2 are now available wherever books are sold. So please do go over to her website. It's her name, SherryKnowlton.com. Welcome, Sherry, to the program.
Hi, Sherry.
Thanks for having me. Hello.
Thanks for being here. It's a pleasure to have you. Welcome back.
Thanks. I've enjoyed the other sessions, and I'm looking forward to this one as well, of course.
Well, Sherry, obviously you are very well traveled. And when we travel, sometimes we are overwhelmed preparing for the travel. Should I take this? Should I wear that? And I know, for example, when I went on my honeymoon a billion years ago, I had 11 suitcases. Okay. 11 suitcases.
Oh my gosh.
and now I don't go anywhere, but I was able to get it all down to, when I traveled, to one suitcase. And I had an executive when I was in corporate. She and I were flying into the same airport, and of course she had everything figured out very easily. You know, she was ready to go, and I'm still waiting at the conveyor belt for my bags. And she said, no, we're going to have to talk about how to travel, how to pack and travel. But people get overwhelmed, and it actually can be a problem, even in relationships that you're in, because the other person's like, what are you doing? So I know you have expertise and you've written about this. What are some tips that you can give about how to pack, how to travel when it comes to fashion?
Okay. Well, yes, in each of my books, Beyond the Sunset, Volume 1 is called Adventures Outside My Comfort Zone. Beyond the Sunset, Volume 2 is called Expanding My Horizons. And in each of those books, I have a chapter with some travel tips, and plus I work in tips as well throughout the books. Those 11 steamer trunks remind me of those movies that you see of travel back in the 1800s by ship, when they bring on trunk after trunk after trunk. Of course, the dresses women wore back then, probably it could only fit one per trunk, right? But these days, one of the things that I think can be most effective, although I have to say that I'm better um, at preaching than practicing. I always have struggles when I myself pack for trips, but I think less is more. And I actually keep a packing list on my computer, especially for a lot of the adventure travel that we do, like African safaris, or we were just in the Amazon this summer. And for those, you, just by the nature of where you're going, you fly in small planes and things like that, you are restricted in your baggage. But I think packing light is always the best, and I know that that is a real struggle sometimes, and I think it's important to sit down in advance. I'm a little bit of a planner, but start your packing, especially for a big trip, in advance. That's one of the tips that I have, so that you can really figure out well in advance what's going to fit in that suitcase. And one of the things that I think you need to assess as well is where are you going? How are you going to be traveling? For instance, if you're going to be lugging a suitcase yourself on trains throughout Europe, you might not want to have to lug 3 suitcases. You may only want to have one. If you're in a tour group where they take care of everything, and even deliver your bags to your door, maybe you have a little bit more leeway. Or as I said, as the other far example, more extreme, if you're flying in little airplanes hopping through Botswana, you might be limited to a soft-sided duffel bag that only allows you 30 some pounds or something. So I imagine both of you have faced this struggle somewhere along the line.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yeah, they were good tips. I actually have I think I shared it with you, Diane. I have a funny luggage story that I'll just tell quickly. I was in corporate and we were traveling. I was traveling with a client and we had to go to 3 different cities. And long story short, we were in Madrid and there was one of those escalators that goes straight up the Madrid airport. So I had 2 bags with wheels. So I had no way to hold on. I was wearing high heels and a suit. So as the conveyor started going up, I was in a full, I was like this, like I was skiing. I had my knees totally bent and the sweat was pouring off of me. And if I had let one of those bags go, I could have killed someone when I got up to the top. I'm telling you what, I feel like I ran 10 miles and I thought, I've got to do something different.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I will never. And it ended up that somebody broke into my suitcase and stole all my stuff. I went to the police department and anyway, that was a good learning lesson.
Oh my goodness gracious. Oh, I wouldn't know what to do. One of the things is the weather, because I have forgotten to double check the weather, and I just think everything's supposed to be sunny because I'm in Texas, right? In the middle of Texas. It does snow in northern Texas, but do you want to give some tips on that? Because I know I discover if I need a coat, I'll just wear it because they're so bulky to get into the one suitcase. So I'd love to know your thoughts.
Yes. No, that's actually a good thought as well. You know, some of what I'm talking about here, my husband and I have learned over many years. I remember one time early on, we went to Tuscany. And, you know, you see pictures of Tuscany with beautiful sunshine, flowers blooming. So I didn't pack or wear on the airplane stuff that was quite that warm, and our baggage went astray. This was back in Air Italia days, and I'm not even sure that airline exists anymore. But we didn't get our luggage for 3 days, and we were in this stone tower that we'd rented in Tuscany, which was lovely, but was very chilly. I learned a lesson then that, you know, don't pack all your warm stuff. Even if you think it's going to be very balmy when you get there, don't pack all of that in your luggage that you check. You know, I think you make a good point, Diane, about having to really assess where you're going to go. If you're going to go to the Arctic, you know, you're probably going to maybe need 2 suitcases just because coats are so heavy, or you'll need to wear that coat or carry it onto the plane to give yourself some space. Another option, we traveled once to a place in Canada to see polar bears with a company called Natural Habitat Adventures. They actually supplied the Arctic boots and parka when you got there, which was just lovely because we didn't have to worry. I mean, we still had to wear a coat, but we didn't have to worry about lugging along Arctic level type stuff. I think the other thing is that I would say a foldable raincoat, one that packs down into almost nothing. And there's all sorts of options out there. That's one of the best things you can buy because that can easily go in your luggage. And even if you're going to, you know, India in the dry season, there could be a rainstorm, and it's good to have that raincoat for when you need it and easily, you know, not take up much room in your luggage, but pop it out whenever you need it. In fact, that happened to us at the Taj Mahal. Only place it rained the whole trip was when we were at the Taj Mahal on our first time in India.
Very good.
Yeah, that's a great story. Thank you.
Yeah, it's not about fashion. Sometimes when you're traveling, it's about being comfortable, getting around, trying not. If you're so worried about all your luggage, you will, as Dr. JACALYN mentioned in the beginning, you could end up having an argument because men don't understand why we want to have 5 different blouses with us. But I found ponchos are really good because they do fold up. What do you think about that?
I agree. You know,
Weather
I think
ponchos, you know?
some people love them, some people, yeah, the big ones that just go right over you, right?
Yeah. But
Yes.
but I have one that has a hoodie, so if it's raining, I'm talking about instead of a raincoat, I carry this poncho. That's a weather poncho, kind of like what you wear at Niagara Falls if you've been, because it can handle the weather.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Now, I want to propose
Yes.
something
And
else.
especially if you're not.
Oh,
Oh.
sorry. Yeah, girls, I just want to propose something else, another perspective. So I was brought up that when you travel, you get dressed. You're always dressed to the nines. And of course, certain people who taught me that don't do that anymore, but that's another story. So I would always travel in my heels, all made up, ready to go. And what I found was, depending on, and again, I don't travel anymore for the last 2 years, but prior to that, I would find certain airlines, if they were not for the business traveler, they were for families and for individuals, people were dressed one way. And then for business travel, people were dressed another way. So, for example, I'm just generalizing. If someone were going to be going to an amusement park, maybe located in Florida, and it's a bunch of children and families, they're going to be dressed one way. And if somebody is going to a business meeting somewhere, they're going to be dressed another way. So I was always one of the ones who was dressed to the nines. It's a lot of work. It's uncomfortable, but yet I don't know, it seems to look nice when everyone's dressed. And instead of, I see people with the sweatpants, and I don't know, I'm not judging. I'm just saying it's a different way of travel. So what about getting dressed up to travel? Do either of you think that's something that you believe in, or not so much?
Sure, you tackle it, and then I'll put my thoughts in.
Well, okay, thanks. I actually spent many years as a business traveler, just like you're talking about, where I wore suits to travel. I had to be in Texas from Pennsylvania, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for a meeting, and I was dressed in a suit and heels and the whole 9 yards. And I do remember the days. I'm certainly old enough that traveling on an airplane, not that I did that when I was a child, but I remember seeing pictures of everybody in their absolute best when they got onto an airplane, because it was a big deal. These days, I think that even when I read major travel magazines, they're giving you travel suggestions about comfort, especially shoes, but also, like, their idea of comfort isn't like a nice, elegant, two-piece top and slack set or anything. It's usually a higher end sweatsuit. So, Dr. JACALYN, like you're talking about, sweatsuits are like a big thing. I never wear sweatsuits, but I do dress comfortably in comfortable slacks. I usually wear sneakers, or like flat-soled shoes. And also layers, because airplanes can be cold, airplanes can be warm, and especially if you're traveling overnight, you want to be comfortable when you're sleeping. The thing that I do believe, though, is that there's a way to look nice and be comfortable. And I think that gets you many things, including upgraded seats. There's this subconscious bias that people have in the airplane industry, I believe, toward people who look nicer versus people who are wearing tattery things, or, skating on the edge of their airline code in terms of dress that's decent. There's still some airlines that have decency standards. So I think it can be to your advantage in terms of perhaps extra services with the airline. And then I think finally, doing something like wearing shorts. first of all, my knees would get too cold. But I think also there are safety concerns that if there is some sort of airplane accident, you want to be wearing some sort of clothes that will help protect you as you're trying to get out the door in that airplane.
It's an
Yeah,
excellent
really
tip. I
good
never thought
points.
about that.
I know,
Yeah.
they're great points.
Mhm.
So I agree with what you were sharing. And it's just another story. When I was in corporate, I was traveling with a colleague, and it turns out that one of the senior executives from the company, we hadn't met him because we just started, he was on the plane. And when we went to the baggage department, this other person was wearing jeans, and we didn't know that the one of the executives was there, and he came over and he said something to her, and he said, you know, I know who you are. How dare you travel dressed like that? And she was put on notice because he said that she represented the company and that we don't dress that way. And the other thing he said was that if your baggage was lost, you're not going to be ready to come to the meeting, because if you come to the meeting dressed like that, we're not going to permit you to stay. So I always remembered that as well. So I think it is different depending on what the purpose is of your travel. If you're traveling for leisure, then you should be able to be comfortable, obviously, and not be impressing anyone. But at the same time, I feel like there should be some kind of decorum or some type of foundation. I've been on planes, people take off their shoes. Hello, what are you doing with your bare feet? And then you talk about shorts. Those seats are dirty, people. How many people have been sitting in them? And I don't know, it could be me. Diane, what do you want to say about this?
No, I'm old-fashioned. I grew up in the days where I saw my grandma and Aunt Pat and mom and them, dressed so perfectly with their gloves and everything. But that was a whole different era, because even the stewardess were dressed just immaculate with their perfect suits and so forth. I actually think it's really tacky to be wearing jeans and your underwear showing, and or your shorts are so short that your cheeks are showing. I'm just
Right.
like, seriously? But what a good point about, if there was an accident, you need to have clothes that can protect you. Now I will wear, if I'm going to go to a meeting, I might wear something comfortable, but on my bag that I carry on, I'll have that change, and I'll go in and I'll change really quick in one of the stalls. If I'm lucky enough to be, I call it the Jennifer Aniston airline because of the commercial for Emirates, where it has a shower, then that's like heavenly, right? So, but
Exactly.
not all airlines let everybody go take a shower, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, I think there should be, even with your families, you should teach people there's ways to dress and there's ways not to dress, and purposes and so forth. Now I'll have flip-flops because I hate having to take your shoes off, and I'll have socks on with my flip-flops, just because it's easier when you go through security and so forth. So I'll have a pair of shoes, a proper pair of shoes to change into once I'm ready to get into the taxi. So that's sort of my take on things. But I love looking nice, and I think that when you look nice, you're respectful, and people respect you a little bit more, and I'm all for those upgrades. That's a good point, Sherry.
You're ready for the day. You're ready for the
Yeah.
night, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Exactly. So, Sherry, you and Diane have traveled extensively, and you've been able to collect a lot of your experiences and your memories and put it into writing. Tell us about that.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to do with these books is, number one, as you say, capture a lot of the experiences that we've had over decades of travel. My husband and I started out as hippies in 1972 in a van circling the country for a few months before we settled down and started to to work in real lives. And, then we're hikers. So, the fitness part of your show, we had our years as, hiking the Appalachian Trail and the Rocky Mountains. And then we started to broaden the types of travel that we did, including a few years of sailing, really avid sailing around the world, mostly in the Caribbean. But I wanted to just write everything down. And during the pandemic, I had that perfect opportunity because we couldn't travel in real life. And so I basically spent, a lot of that time during the pandemic holed up in our sunroom, pulling on from journals and photos and, different experiences we've had, and writing these books. And also talking and trying to include some suggestions for people who, even if they travel a lot, may not have thought about some of these things, or for people who haven't traveled, to give them an idea of what would be some nice things to do, nice places to go. Um, and then finally, I think I've become a bit of an advocate over the years for traveling because I really think it's a wonderful way to, I don't know, learn about the rest of the world, but also it gives back so much. So it's sort of all of that is the reason that I ended up writing the books. And the first one's been out since September, but the second one just came out yesterday. So it's fresh on the shelves.
Congratulations. That's super exciting. Can you hold up your books and show us?
Oh, absolutely. Here's the new one. And there are photos throughout these books too. All taken. This one's by my husband. This one is at a temple in Indonesia called Borobudur. And we hiked to this temple, which was built like, hundreds of years ago. And we watched the sunrise over these two volcanoes that you can see in the distance. The first book, oops, sorry, I've got to get my scale here right. Beyond the Sunset, the first volume, this is a scene in Kenya, in Samburu National Park, sort of in mid to northern Kenya. And we were having sundowners. This was our first safari.
I had a feeling you'd say Kenya because I recognize they have those trees like that, and they're always found those phenomenal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's sort of your iconic African sunset look, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But I've never been to Indonesia. What were some of your highlights?
Indonesia was very interesting. We sailed on a old, I can't remember the name of the type of boat, but it was a sailboat, although I have to admit we didn't sail much. We used the motor a lot. It was with a group of people. It was a small tour, like maybe 20 people, something like that. And we sailed from island to island. Java is one of the biggest, and we got to see shadow puppet shows. And, we went to different villages and saw a lot of temples. We also then went to Bali during that trip, which I loved Bali. We stayed in Ubud for a few days, which is very sort of uh, the there we also like went to a temple where there's lots of monkeys. We ended up at the trip back in Bali, and then we went to the remote islands, including one where they live. I think they live on 3 islands in Indonesia. And they're those big giant lizards that are very dangerous. but the rangers had these sticks with prongs on the end, and that kept them, the people, I guess they were used to people. But it was a very interesting trip, and it seemed like the longer we sailed on the boat, the more remote the islands became. So it was
Wow.
quite an interesting adventure.
Wow.
Sounds very exciting. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We'd love to have you read for us if you would do us that honor.
Oh, sure. Let me see. I have to find the passage that I had picked out. Okay. This is from a chapter called, and I should maybe explain that this book is both books are a little bit of a hodgepodge. Some of it's straight memoir, but most of it is travel tips, and then also essays on different aspects of travel. So it's not like a travel log about Indonesia, like I, just did a 2-second travel log. It's more like essays on different things. And this chapter is called The Night Sky. And this is what I'll read about. Hands down, the best night sky I've ever seen was in Botswana's Kalahari Desert. We stayed 3 times in the Kalahari. At Jack's camp on the Makati salt pans on the northern edge of the Kalahari, we saw great expanses of stars as we sat around the campfire at night. But at Kalahari Plains Camp, situated further south in an almost empty, flat stretch of the desert, we've seen the most astounding night skies. Each of the camp's tented rooms includes a second-floor sleeping platform. During both stays, we spent a night on the platform in the open air. The staff made up a mattress for the night. A gate at the top of the stairs kept out wild animals. And above us, the night sky was a true wonder in the clear desert air, hundreds of miles away from any source of artificial light. The largest nearby city, Johannesburg, South Africa, is over 600 miles away. And Botswana's much smaller capital city, Gaborone, is approximately 400 miles distance. In other words, this camp is very remote. Above our bed on the viewing deck, the Milky Way shimmered in a vast, brilliant swath across the sky. We could see thousands of stars, usually lost to sight because of Earth's light pollution. I tried to stay awake as long as I could each night, just to take in every one of the awe-inspiring stars that loomed above us. They felt so close, I was bereft. When reaching out, I couldn't pluck one from the velvet sky. In the Kalahari, I felt that I had truly experienced that passage from Tennyson's Ulysses, which I'd pinned to my childhood bulletin board. I had sailed beyond the sunset and the baths of all the western stars. If you haven't done this in a while, please find an outside spot to view the stars at night. It can be hard to get the best view in a bright city, but most other places still provide decent night sky visibility. Find a comfortable spot to sit or lie down, take a deep breath, then lean back, gaze upward, and lose yourself in the universe.
Wow.
So poetic.
I
Oh
know.
my
I love the
gosh.
word choices too.
Yeah, so poetic.
Beautiful.
But you're right.
It was a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Oh, I could picture it, but I know it had to be even more brilliant, what you saw. But just the night sky, the way you described the velvet sky and this reaching for the stars. Oh my gosh.
I felt like I was there.
Mhm. Mhm.
It's Beautiful.
Thank
The
you.
Milky Way is amazing, isn't it?
It is, and it's funny. Just this week, I was reading an article, maybe in Sierra Club magazine, but about how few people in America can actually see the Milky Way because of the
You're right.
light pollution. And when you think that the bulk of the population lives in big cities, and there's all that light pollution that does block out visibility of the Milky Way. So it's a rarer treat than I really had thought, even when I was writing the book, to be able to actually see the Milky Way. Now, you can still go to Montana or even our house in Pennsylvania, which is out a little rural. It's it's in parts of rural Pennsylvania. You can still see the Milky Way, but it, in the Kalahari, it was just extraordinary. You just don't realize how big it is.
Mhm. That is wonderful. That is
Diane,
wonderful.
can you see it from where you are?
No, not in Austin, but if we drive out to the hill country, then it's all country. And like this summer, we were away, and we would sit out on the deck and look at the stars. But you have to be really way out to be able to see anything that Sherry just described. So, yeah.
Yeah.
It brings out,
Yeah.
like, it touches your soul, I would think, when you see it
I
that
realize
deep.
there's more out there than just us.
This is true.
Exactly. When you look at all those stars, I just can't fathom that we could possibly be the only creatures of any kind in the universe. I mean, in
No,
some ways, that's sort of arrogant for us to believe that we are, I think.
this is true.
Is that a new book coming for you, Sherry?
Oh, that's a good one.
No, probably not.
No space travel on the
No
list for
space.
Sherry.
No, I like looking at the stars, being in the stars, I'm not so sure.
Agreed.
Yeah, I guess Diane, are you interested in space travel?
I used to be when I was younger, but then I got wise. It was like I like my feet planted on the ground. I even say a prayer every time we take off and land. I'm very happy to be back on the ground. I want to bring holy water and spread it on the plane.
I always say a prayer when I land as well. It
Yeah.
is such a blessing. Sherry, one thing that we didn't touch on, I'd love to in the last few minutes, is traveling as an American to another country. What advice can you give here?
Great question.
Oh, well, I'm of the firm belief that Americans should travel, and many of us are quite respectful of other cultures. I think the number of Americans who travel actually help the economies of many nations. Some could do without us, but certainly it's a plus. But Americans have in some places a little bit of a bad rap for different things, and so there's a couple of, I think, considerations. One is what should you do in order to sort of be respectful of the countries that you're visiting. And then another thing is that in these days of global terrorism, or are there ways that you can make yourself safer by being less, quote, obviously American? And in terms of the respectfulness, I always approach going to other countries to say that I'm a visitor, which I actually am, in their culture. And they may not do things the way we do in America. And that's perfectly fine because it's their country. You don't have to always agree with what their cultural norms are, but I believe that while you're in their country, you need to respect them, just because that's the right thing to do. In some cases, it also can keep you out of jail. Like you read about American kids defacing temples and things like that. I mean, that's just stupid. But I think that if in Italy, for instance, there's some churches that don't let women in if their knees aren't covered by either slacks or, capris or a long skirt, or having some places want women to wear a shawl over their head in religious places. Y Do that, because, they might not let you in, if you don't, and besides, it's their rule, th their country, their rules. I've been in authoritarian countries where it can actually be even a little scary. North Vietnam at Ho Chi Minh's tomb is one that comes to mind, where the rules were so strict about what you had to take everything and put it in a locker. You had to be very respectful. You couldn't talk loudly. I mean, but do that because you're in their country, and it's not harming, as long as it's not harming you. And if it does, then don't do it. I think in terms of being safe, you know, people tell me in other countries, as I've talked to them, that Americans are often easily able to be identified. Um, some people think that we're loud. Some people, we smile a lot. I know I'm a smiler, so we smile a lot in cultures where maybe that's just not done on the street. You just don't smile at every passerby. We have very white teeth, apparently, and good teeth, and we're well fed, and we often wear things that proclaim that we're American. Our football team or our USA flag T-shirt. And the other thing that I think we're also known for abroad is white sneakers. Um, in those cases, maybe you want to dial that down a little bit, especially if you're in a place where there has been terrorism activity in recent months. You don't have to wear the flag T-shirt, because maybe you don't want to be the first one chosen if there's a bomber. I don't think that's renouncing your American heritage. I think that's just being a smart traveler, as an example.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
wow, there are some really good visuals that you gave me with the teeth and the sneakers and yeah, we actually have a comment. Hello, Tarek. Nice to have you back with us. Most certainly, listening to your descriptions, I want to travel and explore this site. What an accomplishment. Definitely there are other wonders somewhere else. Yeah, thank you for engaging with us.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
I just want to throw one more thing in before he goes, that thank you for all those great tips, but also if for some reason you are picked up, do not give anyone your passport, and always have copies of your passport, so that if anyone says, oh, you need to hand over your passport, you give them a copy of it, because you will never get that passport back, and you may not be able to get to the embassy without it. So I just want to throw that in.
I just got chills on that, Diane.
Wow, that's an excellent thing. Yeah, and you've lived abroad, so you've had these experiences. Yeah. Oh.
Right, but I was also the warden for our area, in case we had to evacuate. And so you had to-go bags, and that was the one thing you knew, is you had to have at least 10 copies of your passport. You knew never ever to give your passport away. And you needed to make sure you had, that whatever you were traveling with, you could be able to have a change of clothes or a jacket, because if you all of a sudden are being evacuated, you don't know what country you're going to end up in before you go to another country. So you needed to have different types of currency as well. So,
Wow, they are great points. Thank you.
Wow.
You know,
so
when I
Yeah.
was traveling to France, this was in the 90s, and I was staying at very nice place, which I miss. Anyway, I had to give my passport to the front desk, and they kept it locked up. As soon as you checked in, you had to give them your passport. I don't know if that's changed or not.
no, they still make you do it. You try
No.
to fight it, but
Mm-hmm.
they guarantee they.
Yes.
But if it's a quality hotel, Sherry, I didn't mean to cut in. Please share your thoughts. Usually, you don't have to worry.
Yes, no, that's what I was going to say. I mean, it always makes me a little uncomfortable to give it up, but I think in France it's the requirement. You know, who knows exactly what they do with it, but they do take your information, and then we've always had them be very prompt about giving it back. But France isn't the only country that does that. There
Right.
are others that will take your passport for a little while, but it does leave you feeling a little bit uneasy.
This is true. So
Absolutely.
also, then that's why
I don't
another
think people.
reason you should go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to follow up with saying, you know, I think people don't always appreciate how valuable your passport is and how very valuable an American passport is.
Extremely.
Go
But
ahead.
when you travel, you should also make sure you register with every embassy in every country. So if you do lose your passport or something, you're registered, and that will help you get to the
How do you
embassy and
do
get a
that,
new one.
Diane? Can you share how
Sure,
you
you
do?
just go to the consulate, the U.S. consulate, and you tell them where you're traveling, and then usually they'll just recommend you for the consulate for like Puerto Rico or whatever your country is, that's your destination, and you fill out a travel form and put all your information in there along with the dates that you're going to be there. That way they know, because again, you don't, as Sherry pointed out, when you least expect it, something could happen. And if you're registered,
Mm-hmm.
then they know to look for you to get you evacuated. But if you're not registered, you're not going to be one of the first ones evacuated.
Great education points
There's
today,
also
lady.
a web. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
One more thing, just for information, there is also the Department of State now has a website that you can go to and include that information for the countries. And I believe, Diane, it serves the same purpose as going directly to the consulates.
You're absolutely right.
Because
Yeah.
we always do that before we
Yeah.
leave the country. We fill out where we're going to be. So,
Yeah.
sorry.
Perfect. No,
No,
perfect. You're right. It's the State
good
Department.
points. Well, Diane, you and I have to get over to the United Kingdom news and culture. Our show is starting very soon.
Yeah.
Sherry, thank you again for being with us. We have your information here, but for people who can't read the banner or they're listening on a radio channel or a podcast, what's the best way to reach you? How do they get your books? How do they get in touch?
Okay. Well, the best way to reach me is my website, which is sherryknowlton.com, SherryKnowlton.com. And my books are available at almost all online retailers, from Amazon to Barnes and Noble to Sunbury Press to wherever. And in most bookstores, if they're not on the shelves, then you can always ask your bookstore to order them. Beyond the Sunset, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And thank you so much for inviting me back. This has been an interesting conversation. Thanks.
Yes, it has. It took a direction all of its own, which I love. It's really authentic. So thank you, Sherry.
Thank you, Sherry.
We wish you continued success with your book launch.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Bye for now.
Bye, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye.
Diann, would you like to let people know how they can contact you?
Sure. I thought we were signing off. So you can go to DIANN FLOYD BOEHM, BOEHM.com, and you can reach me right there and with everything you want to know. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much. And please do stay with us. We're coming right back with United Kingdom news and culture and our expert correspondent, Simon McDonald, who's joining us from Scotland. We'll see y'all later. Bye.
Bye, everybody.